Have you been accused of alienating your children against your ex? Are you currently fighting a battle in custody and you're worried that you may lose the children because you're being accused of being anti your ex? Well, today's episode, we're going to be talking about the alienation industry and what's going on and the pipeline that kids seem to be put through the minute the word alienation gets used, and some good positive things that may help you on this journey. Welcome, Mum.
Hello, Laura. Hi, everyone.
Now, we are not your lawyers. I am not a lawyer at all. And you need to be seeing a lawyer if you're being accused of this kind of thing. So always, always, always act on what your lawyer recommends, not on what you hear on this podcast.
Yeah.
But that's a good reminder for anyone. Now let's go to our jingle and get started.
Hello, I'm Laura Furiosi, divorced mother of 3, and I'm here with my mother, Lynette Galvin, with 35 years experience in family law. You're listening to the Divorce Course podcast. Through our candid discussions, we hope to help you through your divorce or de facto separation. We will be answering the most commonly asked questions and covering the stages and steps that you will face on your way to freedom.
So, Mum, you posted on our Facebook page the other day a repost from One Mum's Battle. And this can happen to men or women, to be fair, but predominantly it seems to be a tactic that is used against women. And it's talking about the alienation industry in America, which is slightly different to what's happening in Australia and other countries, but it's got a similar ring to it. So I'm just going to just quickly read out the One Mum's post, and then we're going to talk through the pipeline that kids are usually put through during the family court process. And we're going to talk about each stage and what you can do about it.
It does. It's important to know this is the apparently what's happening in the United States, and every state is different in their law. But I posted it because I found it a good summary of what I've experienced.
So basically, she's said here that the alienation industry is the dark underbelly of the family court system, and it's a lucrative industry. And their aim is to shine a light on the darkness and provide a pathway for those who find themselves trapped in a predictable but disturbing pipeline. So the term parental alienation or parental alienation syndrome was created by Richard Gardner in 1985 for the purpose of deflecting the court's attention from child abuse claims against fathers. This is a debunked concept based on Gardner's clinical observations, not scientific data, and it is not recognized by the United Nations, the American Psychiatric Association, the World Health Organization, or the American Medical Association. So basically, what's happened is this idea of parental alienation has been planted by Gardner. It's grown into an industry, and we're going to talk about the people that play into this industry. And it's been perpetuated by unscrupulous professionals who are profiting off childhood trauma.
Laura, to say these are her words, all of this, yeah.
Once a child is placed in the alienation pipeline, it's a very predictable journey, often ends with the child being forced into traumatizing therapies. And she also puts in their reunification camps and etc., which we don't have in Australia, do we, Mum?
Yeah.
So look, she's on a mission to try and help kids in America. Let's talk about the alienation in Australia and the pipeline that these kids get through. So the first trigger of it, I guess, is that people get divorced. That's the relationship.
Yeah.
Yeah. It's important to note, I've heard of attempts by people to alienate the other parent. I've heard of people trash talking the other parent to the kids and saying horrible things and making stuff up so the kids don't like the parent. I do know that exists. And we have members who have children who are refusing to see them, or that it's really hard for them. So I'm not saying that this issue of kids rejecting parents isn't a problem during divorce. But what I'm saying is, and I think what they're trying to say with One Mum's Battle is that this psychological thing called parental alienation actually isn't a thing. It's not a psychologically proven scientific thing. We just need to be mindful of those people who might listen to this who are really upset that they are not seeing their children.
Yes, and I think the alienation that happens for what she's talking about here, I think it's the alienation that happens when or is alleged to happen when all the person's doing is trying to protect the child from harm. She says it was created to counter or distract the court from abuse. So if you've not been an abuser, then it's really just another thing that they're doing, which is trying to turn the kids against you, but it's not parental alienation.
So the first trigger of it is that people get divorced. That's the
Right.
relationship. And then it goes to the lack of relationship. So they put here, during the relationship, there may have been abuse, neglect, or the unhealthy parent was incapable of bonding with the child or had no interest in the child. However, the public, the family, and everybody else, the image hid this reality.
How common is that? I've seen that so often. And we talk about it where the parent, disinterested, suddenly wants to be parent of the year. And the kids, of course, lap that up. They love it to be suddenly having that, their loved parent paying attention to them.
And we do get a lot of people saying, I don't understand. They're not going to take the kids to soccer. They're not going to take the kids to cricket. They're not even remotely interested in doing any of that. But all of a sudden now they want custody of the children 100% of the time or whatever.
Yeah.
And people are quite shocked.
Yes.
So what's that? I know we're not talking about coercive control or anything else at the moment, but that is the power move, really.
Sometimes, if they've not had an interest in the children at all, then that's bizarre behaviour suddenly. And the kind-hearted part of me thinks that for some people, it's the reality hits them that they're going to lose their cosy relationship and they're scrambling to mend bridges or whatever. But a lot of it is just false behaviour. If they've never been interested before, why would they be interested?
We've talked about lack of relationship and then the shift to power control. And then step 2 is the new platform, the family court.
Yep.
So it's written on this chart. It says when the relationship ends, the unhealthy parent loses power and control over their partner. The need for power and control does not dissipate. It shifts to a new platform, which is the family court system. And how many times have we heard about this? Well,
a person leaves a relationship. They're done. They want no more. They usually don't want anything more to do with that person. And the only way that they can impact you and have power over you is to legitimately, apparently, be looking for time with the kids, going to court and just knowing. I think there's something in some people that like to know that they can drag you back in their realm whenever you have to go to court. And you see them smirking and sort of happy that they've forced you to come and do something they wanted you to do.
And again, we're not talking about coercive control today, but that is another post-separation abuse coercive control way where they're like, how can I get my mitts into this person? They're ignoring my calls. And these people are like, finally, I'm free.
Yes.
I'm left this moron. I'm out. We're safe. And then boom, family court hits. And the chart that we're looking at that you can download or go and look at the One Mum's Battle information or alienindustry.com, it has the accusations begin. That's in the new platform.
Yeah.
So the accusations begin. And then it comes into this gatekeeping, in inverted commas, or enmeshment. So I'm going to just read that out.
Okay.
So it says the parent or bonded parent begins to field accusations of gatekeeping or enmeshment. The preferred parent feels confused and scrutinized as their words and actions are often twisted to create a false narrative. And this alienation allegations begin.
Yeah.
So gatekeeping is a term, I guess, that's used a lot with narcissists where they say, oh, you're gatekeeping, that they get the information. And so they say, oh, you're gatekeeping the children.
Yep. It's got negative connotations. And the implication is there's no good reason to stop the children seeing a person. But in the frame of this, where there is abuse and the children are at risk or possibly at risk in the other person's care, then of course you're going to stand up and say no to the time. And so this is just them relabeling it, and it's been very successful. And I've seen a woman accused of caring about her children too much. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
Wow. Can we just look at some examples of when this gatekeeping argument is used? So domestic violence, I guess?
Yep.
So if someone's been physically violent with the children or physically violent with yourself, and if you feel triggered, please call 13 11 14 Lifeline, or you can call 1-800-RESPECT if you're experiencing this. Basically, anyone who's gone through domestic violence and has tried to escape
Yep.
and they're finally out, and then the parent's like, but I should be able to see my children. You're gatekeeping the children. Is that used a lot?
It is used a lot. And sometimes it is a legitimate action by a person to protect the kids. It's obviously to protect the kids, but it's a way of reversing the argument. And then, of course, once that word, gatekeeping, gets into the discussion, I've seen people use it. I put it in when they do an outline of their case. The parent commences gatekeeping the children. I don't see them from this. When there's legitimate reasons for this. But rather than say, oh, I could see why that person did it because I've been violent to her, they don't ever say that, do they? We never have that moment where it's, I shouldn't have done that. I'm awful. Yeah.
There's the DV situation. Yep. Like, I guess there's also another situation where they get accused of gatekeeping if the kids are just flat refusing to go.
Of course. And if they're older, of course, how do you put a 14-year-old in the car and drag them to somewhere they don't want to go and make them stay there? But yes, so again, it's deflecting away from their poor relationship with their kids. And that's their problem. They've damaged the relationship or whatever it is, and it is not the parents' problem. They call them here the unhealthy parent and the preferred parent. In the early days of this, we used to call them the hated parent and the loved parent.
Oh, brutal.
Oh, isn't that brutal?
But another time we've seen this gatekeeping accusation is when the other person has maybe moved countries or moved states or has some random job that's all over the place, and they demand to see their child 24 hours notice, and the parent's like, they haven't seen you like since last month and you've given me no notice and we're planning to go to little Johnny's birthday party. And then they go, oh, you're gatekeeping the children, you're alienating me.
Yes. That's right. That happens a lot as well. What's exhausting about it, if you are the parent who is being accused of gatekeeping, what's exhausting about it is you actually have to explain and respond every time that allegation is made. You have to go, you knew that this was mum's birthday, or this was show day. We always go to the show, or you knew that you hadn't given me any notice. You need to quickly, because if they send you a message like that, you need to respond. As much as it's awful, you need to respond and put it in context, because otherwise that gatekeeping, if you go, oh, it's just them doing that again, and you don't answer it, it starts to look like a pattern of behaviour. So it's exhausting, but you have to bat that ball back every time. Yeah.
So it's DV, it's people who just want to see the kids when it matters and when they want to see kids and nothing. And it's those kind of people that it's refusing. Or I have also heard of those people that play the victim. They haven't been interested in seeing the kids at all. They haven't seen the kids for 6 months, but then they all of a sudden have to go to court. And all of a sudden they're saying, well, I've been trying to see the children.
Oh, my
they
goodness.
were trying to see the children. Or even in the DV situations where someone's trying to arrange contact centres, etc., but they refuse to go. And then they blame the other parent for gatekeeping. There's some good examples of that kind of situation where it's unfair. But then this chart then moves on, says alienation allegation, and then goes to step 4, the DAVO intensifies. So we've done a great episode on DAVO.
Can you remind me, Rose, what it is?
So it's deny, attack, and reverse victim and offender.
Okay.
I'm going to read what it says here. The DAVO, deny, attack, reverse victim and offender legal strategy of alienation. Accusations are employed to counter allegations of abuse or neglect and to deflect from the reason the children are resistant to the relationship with the non-preferred parent.
Yeah.
So basically, if you have valid reasons or the children have valid reasons, and we've talked about some valid reasons just then, the domestic violence, that they just randomly, sporadically want to see the children, all sorts of things, and just the children's lived experiences. They may just really not like that parent.
Yeah.
Instead of addressing their abuse, addressing their failures, addressing the fact that they haven't tried to set up normal times or being somehow working with you to create time at work, they just switch it and say, all of this is their fault because they are alienating.
Yep, that's right. not only do they not address it, they don't admit it. And this has been a very convenient strategy to use. This whole parental alienation industry has been very loved, frankly, by men's rights groups. And the whole culture of that parenting coordinators, which I deplore, they were all meant to put square pegs in round holes, in my opinion. And I see that the court hasn't legislated for parenting coordinators anymore. The law in Australia, thank goodness, has changed. This is the American version. And she said that they asked her how she managed it. And it was a really interesting comment that she did on her when she posted this on her website on One Mum's Battle. And someone said, how do you counter this? And she said, I'm paraphrasing here, every case is different, but I just had to show how I kept offering them kept bending over backwards to let him have the children. That's what I had to do. And it nearly killed her, Victoria, on that, the stress of it. But in the end, his lies came out and his misrepresentation came out in the witness box.
So basically, in this fourth step, all they're really doing is trying to make you look like the abuser,
yes,
and make them look like the victim. And so, as the One Mum's Battle lady said, she spent the whole time documenting and having proof that she was doing the right thing and she was doing everything she could.
She had to do more than a reasonable person would do to overcome those allegations. So she, I think, bent over backwards to put the proposals and bring her evidence. Thank goodness she did, because there's some scary things going on in the States.
Let's go through the last two steps, talk about this in general and how people can help themselves from this scenario. So that after they've done the DAVO and they've basically flipped it, and they don't even mention all the abuse that they've been accused of, they keep that quiet, or all the reasons they haven't seen the kids that are valid. They make the other person look like the baddie for alienating the children. And then they, as a result of the family court system and this is in America, placing a higher emphasis on parental rights and parental contact versus child safety, psychological, and a reunification team is formed and may consist of custody evaluators, minors counsels, reunification therapists, and expert witnesses. So in Australia, Mum, the experts that are used, not necessarily in a bad way, but when in Australia they say, hey, this person's alienating me against my children, what kind of experts come out of the woodwork to help the court determine that?
Well, there can be psychologists who say that they specialise in reunification therapy.
So that they exist in Australia?
They do. And there's parenting coordinators who I also mentioned. But I think those occupations came into being after the 2006 Family Law Amendments, which in Australia went from emphasising the best interests of the child to talking about 50-50 shared care and parental responsibility, which then I think spawned this industry of people really shoehorning these kids into relationships they probably didn't want. And also they became an additional person to support the idea that there was alienation going on. Just to agree to go to a parenting coordinator was almost, I think, to imply that there was something wrong with you. And it was always pretty well to encourage time with the other person. You never went to parenting coordinators to have less time or no time. It was with one aim, and that was to reunify the kids with the other parent. And of course, they could get sucked in like anyone with that person telling them the wrong thing, playing the victim.
So let's just list out all the professionals that people may come across, and then we'll talk about them. So we've got family report writers, we've got parenting coordinators, we've got family therapists, child impact report writers,
psychologists,
psychologists, psychiatrists,
and even the contact centres. If they were on that alienation train, there seems to be some people who were, like it says here, pro-contact no matter what. And they all have the view, I think, that the children benefit from a relationship by both parents.
Let's just clarify. Mum's not saying that every ICL...
No, I love the ICLs.
So we've listed all the experts that you may come across. But there are some people that are specifically swayed towards, and I know that there are some alienation groups that have preferred therapists, preferred psychiatrists, people. So there are people that are in this pro-contact at all costs, that kind of attitude in Australia. It's not as extreme again as in America. There's no reunification camps, which just scares the hell out of me. But there are people that are willing to write reports that reflect parental alienation, even if they haven't met you.
Well, I must say, I don't think those people are very well regarded at all anymore. And in Australia, since the law changed in 2024, on the 6th of May, they seem to have disappeared from the arena. And I'm not seeing them being promoted as a way to force something to happen that may not naturally happen, you know. I mean, you have to remember these reunification therapy, all these constant reports and family therapy, it involves the kids over and over again in being basically cross-examined, having to tell their story, when it's something to do with the parents. It's not kids. The kids aren't wrong if they don't want to see a parent. There's something wrong with that person's parenting.
We'll jump back to those people in a minute. We'll talk about it as a whole. The next step is they say if the therapy doesn't work, if this doesn't work, so kids are sent to family therapists, kids are analysed by people that the parents are analysed by psychiatrists. If still none of that fits and works, then the next step is that the alienation industry where they try to go to court and say, no contact. Do you see that in Australia though, Mum, where they try to get no contact orders where the other parent can't see the other parent at all?
For 6 months or 12 months, yes.
No contact, no phone, no nothing, in some sort of hope to make the children forget about the preferred.
To break the bond, perhaps, with the preferred parent. I mean, there are people, Laura, who do deliberately turn kids against another parent. And so for years, ever since I've been practicing, there has been that option, but by gum, it's an extreme one, that a child is, I guess, so enmeshed, so persuaded by the parent's argument that they just can't say anything nice about the other parent. And if they were able to talk to their preferred parent, right, so that if you put the child back with the mother, but if they could talk to their father every day or every week or whatever, it would undo the, I guess, healing of the bond, of the relationship. We're not talking about that.
Even if you are talking about that, it's bullcrap. They're kids. If the kids want to talk to their mother or their father, they should pretty well be able to talk to their mother or their father. Yeah. I find it hilarious that legal professionals and people that are not even psychologists, and with all due respect, judges, think that they know how nature works and how to break children's bonds with people.
Yeah.
Sure, if it's an abusive relationship, sure. But I think for the sake of the other parent, you want to put a child through 12 months of not speaking to them. Like it's like they die.
Well, guys, think about this. Now you're not a kid anymore and I'm not a young mother anymore. But imagine if they said we couldn't talk to each other for 12 months. And anyone listening, if you've got a parent that you love, imagine, or a sister or brother, imagine not being able to talk to them for a year or 6 months. There's two aspects to it. One, the cruelty to the child or that it's ordered about. And secondly, the anguish that the other parent must go through. And I don't think children's human rights are being properly regarded when that kind of forced repatriation and disconnection is in place. There sometimes is a safe way to interact with that parent. It doesn't involve going over at night always. It may be just by phone or contacts, and it certainly doesn't always involve 50-50. And that, I think, is one of the reasons that I'm so happy with the way the Australian courts have gone. We've gone back now to talking about the best interests of the kids. And I don't know on what planet that sort of arrangement was the best interests.
It's like a playbook, really. Yeah. It is a playbook.
Yep.
And it's out there somewhere. And when someone does something wrong or they've been physically abusive or they were just horrible and they just want to get back at their ex
Yeah.
or they want to get their children because they belong to them. They see them as possessions that they go down this alienation
Yeah,
route.
or let's not forget the financial incentive. The longer more you've got the children in Australia, the more property settlement you usually get for going forward. And if the longer you have the children with you, the more nights you have, the less child support you have to pay. And I think those two factors are massive drivers in what's gone on and this push for 50-50 in Australia. The new laws in Australia don't talk about 50-50. They're looking again at the children's rights, not about the parents' right to have 50-50.
And when did those new laws come in?
Yep. Well, they came in on the 6th of May last year, and it's focusing on the best interests of the children. So I hope we'll never again see an application for no time at all with a parent. And I think I'm seeing the glimmer of an expectation that if someone even asks for that order, that I've seen a judge who's gone and said, well, where'd you get that idea from? How can that possibly be in the kids' best interests? So I'm hoping it's a bit out of fashion soon. We're all getting better at this children thing.
It just seems like a coercive, controlling behaviour when, like it says that at the top there of the thing, there's no more relationship. They've blocked you, they've moved on, and they're like, okay, I still need that power and control. How can I keep controlling them? Oh, I know, I'll do it through the family court.
Yep.
I'll do it through their children. And the first thing I'll do is I'll just accuse them of parental alienation.
And I'll get my lawyer to feel sorry for me because I'm not seeing the kids and we're going to sort this out through court.
And so they put the kids, like you said, through those professionals. And you do have to be careful at which professional you choose.
You're invited to our free webinar. Whether you're stuck at the beginning of deciding to divorce or you're struggling to find your way through the legal jargon and fear of the unknown of the legal process, we are here to empower you to take control. Join us to learn what steps you can take, followed by a live Q&A where you get Lynn, my amazing mum, and family law accredited specialist to answer your questions. All you have to do is go to www.thedivorcecourse.com.au and click on Reserve My Seat. We'll see you there. Hurry, spaces are limited, so don't miss out. Register today.
And so they put the kids, like you said, through those professionals. And you do have to be careful at which professional you choose.
Yes.
So there are a lot of really good, reputable family report writers. I take any crap. They're there for the kids and they're for the right reasons. And they listen to what the children want and present that to the court. Is that right?
Yes, and they do. And the court have brought in guidelines for people who can write family reports, who can be family consultants. They are also bringing in registration for contact centres because don't forget, in a contact centre, if there was supervised contact, that's where you take your children. They will see the other parent in the presence of someone else. Usually a stranger who works for the agency, the supervised the contact agency. And then that person who has only observed one parent with the kids in a very small window of time, maybe an hour or 2 hours, in a little room, might look at that interaction and go, well, nothing wrong there, and write a report that says that there's no reason why that contact needs to be supervised anymore. Ridiculous, in my view, because anyone who's a parent knows that while you're watching a kid tidy up a room or not get on their devices, of course they won't. But if you turn your back, they'll do it. You can't guarantee that when you leave the room, they'll keep on doing the right thing. So it's a ridiculous thing. So I don't want to upset the people who are working hard for the best interests of children. But we have had 17 years of hell with this 50-50 business. I wouldn't mind if they even separated the idea of having the children from the overall property settlement and dealt with it some other way, but I don't know how, maybe via more child support.
Can we talk about family therapy then? It seems to be another trap that's not mentioned here, but we have heard about it where they say, let's not get lawyers involved. Let's not do this. Why don't we just take little Johnny and me to family therapy and see if we can change how that's going. So this kid who may have been physically abused, emotionally abused, or some other reason why they're refusing to see mum or dad, goes to this family therapy. There has been stories in the Australian ABC of family therapists who are set up, like they had secret recordings of them. I'll put a link in the show notes, where they literally said, bring them in, I'll get them to say enough stuff, and then I'll write a report for the judge saying it's alienation.
Oh my
And I'll
goodness.
give you 100% custody. So
I did see that. I did.
yes, there are therapists sadly out there that have been caught. And funnily enough, the person who blew the whistle was the person that had originally engaged the therapist, because they were like, this is not okay.
That's brilliant.
This is
I remember that.
There are people out there who will not blow the whistle. So, Mum, what kind of things do people need to be careful of if they go and see family therapy or marriage counselling before they go to court?
Okay.
If instead of going to court, but then all of a sudden, boom, we've got notes. I've got all this information. I'm going to use it against you in court now.
Don't let the kids get involved in this stuff. It's not their problem. I remember Judge Bell used to say, kids haven't got a problem. It's the parents. If you want to go to therapy, by all means go, but don't drag the kids into it. I can't see any reason why you would go to that sort of therapy. I think if you go to marriage guidance or relationship therapy, for couples therapy, with the view to either separating respectfully or trying to get back together, everything in that context is privileged. You can't talk about it in court because it was in a confidential counselling session. But when the kids are involved, suddenly they seem to be able to, because the law is with children, almost everything's admissible if it's at all relevant, because they've got to do the best interests of the children. There is some legislation in the pipeline now for protected confidences.
Now, there's also with psychiatrists and psychologists, I find this bizarre and it breaks my brain trying to get around it. People who escaped domestic violence, who have finally gotten out, are terrified of sending their children over there because they're terrified. Oh, okay, now I'm out of the picture. Who's going to stop the abuse? And then they go to these psychiatrists or psychologists and they say, well, the mother or the father seems afraid of sending the child. She's got some hang-ups.
Yes.
So I've seen that be used.
I have too.
As alienation argument.
And
heard about.
Yeah, I mean, it's terrible of people to say that.
They've had it gone very hyper-focused on safety.
Yes.
And so that is another part of the alienation card that they play, where they say that, because the mother or the father's so scared of their ex, the children are now so scared of their ex.
Yeah.
Like that, is that argument still getting used?
It is. Look, it's a dilemma. It's a dilemma for the court to work out what is genuinely a worry for the children or is a projection of the mother's worry. There was a case years ago called Andrew, where there was an allegation of abuse of this child at the hands of the father. The court didn't actually think that had happened, although why they think people make these up, I don't know. Very easy, though, to allege, very hard to rebut. Like alleging alienation is very hard to rebut that. But her lawyer said, I think it was the report, or her psychiatrist said, even if the court doesn't believe or can't say that happened, the impact on the mother of having to send a child to a place where she thinks the child's going to be harmed will be detrimental to her parenting and therefore a bad thing for this child, Andrew. Okay. And that's an argument that you can sometimes use. And you do see, so that if genuinely you hold concerns about the child going over, the only way they would let it in would be if it impacted on your parenting. Now I hope that they've come to a place where they say, if you've left because of family violence, it makes sense that you don't send the kids over when there's this violence. So violent behaviour is a big flag now in the new legislation. And it makes sense. I mean, I'm sorry to say, I've seen times where 3 or 4 kids, the little one still goes to father. This was years ago. And the older 3 didn't. And I actually had a row with the ICL and said, why are you sending the 2-year-old? And she said, oh, no, I don't know. And I said, look, the only difference is she can't talk. The other 3 aren't going and she can't talk. And I was very much against it. I was the judge, actually. But yeah, people have an emphasis.
So there are all of these kind of tricks and strategies that they're still trying to pull because the changes to the court only came into effect midway through last year. I do think this kind of pipeline is still happening. The best ways, Mum, to protect yourself from this
is
is what?
just to know that the law has changed, educate yourself on that, keep a record, don't hold back. If what you've experienced at home in the relationship seems like petty little things, it still probably mounts up to coercive control, and that's enough to assist the court to decide whether or not the parent you've left is capable or should be having time with the children. There's also now been a change in terms of after, was it Rose's case, the court held in that this 50-50 shared care thing was also applicable in interim orders. So that interim orders, you were at risk of having to send the children 50-50. Now there's a change and the law, I think, is going back to how it was. And so on an interim hearing, court's going to err on the side of caution. They're going to put the children, hopefully they will look at what the status quo is, who the children have been living most with, who's been most involved, and put in very safe orders, not changing anything dramatically until such time as everyone gets a chance to be heard in court and in cross-examination. And that plays out of the hands now of someone who might use the law or legal papers to harass and bully and get continued.
Is it also kind of sadly landing on the shoulders of the children? Because when you look at the specialists that get involved when alienation is mentioned, there are children's impact report writers, there's family report writers, there's psychologists, family therapists. It does seem very heavily focused on the kids because I guess if one parent's saying, oh, the kids don't want to go, and the other parent's saying they do want to go, they're gatekeeping and alienating me. They have to ask the kids, and the kids then have to tell someone something. What if they're too afraid to say anything?
They don't really ask them much. They just observe. And I know that in the past, if someone was coaching the children, it would come out, all the bad things about the parent that was hated would come out without any context, and it would be just them saying what the other parent had taught them. I think we've got the skills now. There's some very good impact writers and family report writers now. The research has moved on. So I know it's on the shoulders of the... Yeah.
Are you saying, though, if a child sat down with the impact report writer or the family report writer or therapist or whatever, and they said, I don't want to go to dad's or I don't want to go to mum's because X, Y, Z, they would take that on board and listen?
Yes. But if they...
In Australia.
Yes, in Australia, they listen to the wishes. I mean, if they think the child's been influenced by a parent, so if they go to the family report writer and they go, oh, I don't want to go to mum's because she always cheats at cards. Oh, well, the report writer might say, did you ever play cards with your mother? No. And then dad told me, or mum. So they can pick the stuff that's not coming from their heart. And I've seen kids who say that their mother, is obsessed with homework or obsessed with washing up or something. That's not a bad thing. If that's the worst thing they can say about a parent, it's not a bad thing. So it's too tricky for anyone outside of that to understand whether the kids are being coached or not. But hopefully...
So your best defense is documentation to prove that you've always tried to foster the relationship. Never be caught, never do it, trashing, talking the other parent. Don't get the children involved in the divorce at all. Keep all of them out of it. Having a good family report would really help in alienation, but also the psychiatric side of things, if they evaluate you or whatever. I guess the other defense is not coming across as paranoid, crazy, because that's the other thing they do. They try and paint that element as well.
I think there's maybe tail ends of that, but more and more as the court in Australia at least is learning about coercive control, what they're seeing really is some sort of post-traumatic response. And it's just continuing because they're having to go through the court with this person. I've got high hopes, Laura. I really do, that kids will be listened to and the outcomes will be better. But I do worry about the impact because of the financial side of it, that there still will be these battles for, I want what's share, I want equal. As soon as I heard the word 50-50, that they're dividing up stuff, not
My
children's time. Yeah.
Yeah. So it's a rough pipeline for your kids to run through. But if you can keep them as blissfully unaware as possible,
Yep.
mind you, still taking them to all these different specialists and whatever.
Yeah.
But you really have to just be on top of. And I think that when you look at this pipeline, the bit that really catches people, the bit that really they get screwed over, and it's sometimes quite hard to undo, is right at the beginning. You've got to be aware that if you've got that kind of ex and you know that they've done some stuff and they're going to try this Darvo reverse situation, they're going to play the victim and they're going to accuse you of gatekeeping and all of that, be aware and be prepared right at the start, because all it takes for them is to get a message from you saying, why the heck would I let you see the children? You're an abusive, so and so. So they gather all that up and then
put it all together. So you say, what do you mean I've never been abusive? You have to answer it all the time. You have to answer every time they say that. I think also too, if you've done all the heavy lifting in the relationship, you might have been a stay-at-home parent or the other parent just not interested, and suddenly they want to be parent of the year. A way to document that is if you have to tell them, for instance, where the lunchboxes are kept, what time they go to school, what time they pick up, all of those sort of things, because that's what happens. Sometimes someone has no idea, suddenly they want to be involved. Well, give them that information in an email and they don't even have to answer it. And there's your proof that that they are rewriting history because they want to show that they contributed more than you did or equal to you. So there's a couple of little things you can do in the early days.
And if they accuse you of gatekeeping in those early days, because let's face it, we do know that like one or both of the parents go off the rails a little bit because they've just had a breakup. Keep a documentation, keep a timeline of the times that you said, hey, you said you were going to pick up little Johnny, where are you? Keep a timeline of the amount of times they didn't come and get little Johnny, or the amount of times you offered to, and document it and prove it. So when the alienation word gets thrown into court and you're just like, I'm sorry, what now? You're not bamboozled, you're not blindsided. You can just go, okay, hold my beer. Here's all the information you need.
Yeah. And they often won't have told their lawyers the truth either. And so something documented like that, keeping the screenshots of the photo of what they've said, you only have to prove one or two of them. And the whole feeling changes. And then they're looking at that person as being manipulative and controlling. Yeah. So all the best.
It is sad. It's sad that it's an actual lucrative industry. And I find it like, I know that there are elements of it in Australia because I've read those articles where they've gone behind the scenes and done some detective work on these types of people. But we do not want Australia to go the way of America with reunification camps. We do not want that. So we are going to scream it from the rooftop until someone tells us to shut up, and then we'll keep screaming it from the rooftops. But that's not going to happen here. And we took a stand to parenting coordinators, and we did an episode on why your narcissistic ex may want you to have a parenting coordinator, because we did not want that to come from America to Australia either. And I think we helped a little bit. We upset a heap of people.
Mostly parenting coordinators.
Parenting coordinator industry. But I am happy to keep fighting for the kids.
Yeah.
And not want the kids to be dragged off to some camp somewhere. The stories are just horrific. And Australia's not there yet. And I'm hoping it never will get there yet. But we're not going to let it if we can help it.
I think Australia has begun the wind back from that precipice. I know there are some states in the United States who banned reunification camps. I don't think Australia is that in that trajectory anymore. I think the law change last year means we're back to common sense.
The minute we get a good case that's reported, we'll do an episode on it.
Okay.
But until then, I'm not that optimistic, but
No.
hearts out to anybody who is facing parental alienation accusations,
Yep.
particularly if you have been battling it for years. We have some great episodes on post-separation abuse. Go and listen to those episodes and keep your spirits up. We've got your back. We're here for you. And if you haven't seen 1 Month's Battle, go and check that website out and go check out her account. It is really helpful. She has some great tips for anyone, men or women, going through this kind of thing. So sending our love to you, and thank you, Mum, for your time today.
No worries, Laura. Bye.
If you found this podcast helpful, we'd love it if you could rate, review and subscribe. By doing so, you are spreading the word to help someone else just like you. Lynn would like to remind you that this podcast is general advice only, and you should always get legal advice in relation to your particular situation. And remember that the Australian laws may have changed since recording